Welcome to my audio journal podcast for September 25th, 2022. This is a show formerly known as Missing Pieces, and as of this week, once again, known as Missing Pieces. The reason for the name change is a few reasons. First of which is I have a lot of shows on this channel now, and the audio journal needed a name. And I thought, what better name to give it than the name that it was called for the first 100 and some odd episodes that I made this. If you're just new to this or you're stumbling across this podcast, this was once on my Lego channel, Brickitect, and it was kind of a Lego podcast. I would discuss Lego every week, but it was also about my life. And it got to the point after a few years of doing it that I realized that Lego was such a small part of it that it really wasn't a Lego podcast at all, and it would be better on my Greg's World channel. So I moved it over there, and after a bit, I kind of just dropped the Missing Pieces name and kept it as just the Greg's World podcast. And then I realized, and this is what happens on YouTube, you realize what works and what doesn't work and what makes sense and what doesn't. I realized that maybe this would be better on its own channel, which is why it's now over here on my former Lego live streaming channel. And it's almost like there's a complete circle. It's the circle of life, I suppose. So now it's back on a Lego channel, or formerly Lego channel, and now back with the name Missing Pieces, which I really missed. No pun intended. I like the name Missing Pieces not because of the history of it, which is important to me, but because it is about more than Lego. Lego, of course, you can have missing pieces, but these are like the missing pieces of what I put out to the world, or what's recorded or what's not recorded, and it just feels good. Plus, I already have a logo made up, which is back there. I always struggle to point at the poster, but Missing Pieces has returned. Still the same show that it's always been, and probably always ever will be. But it's great just to have the name back. So now we've got a nice roundup of every show on here having a name. Will it always be the same? Probably not. It's all about evolving and changing and doing what's right for you, and that's about all you can do. I'm happy to be here with you on this lovely Sunday morning because this is the first time that I have gotten off the couch in about 36 hours. I have had a stomach flu that has just been like the most miserable thing over the last few days. It was one thing that Clark Man brought home, I think on Monday into Tuesday. He didn't really have it too bad, but we kept him home for a day and then he was fine. So we sent him in, and then Cody got sick on Thursday. And then Friday night after dinner, I got it the worst of all of us, and I just been laid up like crazy. As such, Watch Attack is now going to be a popular segment this week because I watched a few movies that I want to share with you. In fact, let's just jump into that, I suppose. We'll do this sort of out of order. We'll go into the things that I watched, which I think do I even have on my list here? I do these little outlines for the show that are just kind of like talking points, and I didn't put it on here. So Watch Attack is the mystery segment of the week, but the things that I watched this week. I finished Last Night in Soho, which got really wild. This is the HBO Max edition because everything that I watched here is on HBO Max. Last Night in Soho got crazy. I'm not going to spoil anything from that movie. I talked a little bit about it last week, where it's this girl that's living in London. She's a fashion designer. She starts having like these nightmares or like these dreams where she's almost like living someone else's life in 1960s London, or following this person around. And then there's this separation between her being awake and asleep gets really gray. And it gets just crazier and crazier as the movie goes on, to the point where there's this big twist that you're not going to see coming. It's really cool. So I was happy to finish that. Definitely a mature movie. You don't want to go into that one with any youngsters, or maybe even with a weak stomach, because it gets pretty violent towards the end. Next movie I watched, nothing like that. I watched the movie King Richard. This is something I started it a while ago. I only got a little bit into it, but I was like, hey, I got nothing else to do, so I'll finish this. If you guys haven't seen this one, it's starring Will Smith. I think the most famous part of the movie is when Will Smith went up on stage and slapped Chris Rock. That's probably what the movie, unfortunately, is going to be most known for. But what the movie is about is Serena and Venus Williams. It's them and their dad and their quest to become tennis superstars. And I think we all know how that one ultimately ends up, but it's just a story of a family without a lot of resources, struggling and doing what they need to do to reach a level and the goals that they have set for themselves. And it's quite impressive. And it really got me thinking about like the power of having some really positive parents that care about you and are trying to see you succeed. Because if it wasn't for King Richard or his wife, the Williams sisters probably would have never been anything. These are two black girls that grew up in Compton without a lot of resources at all, who became tennis superstars through just pure willpower and, of course, a lot of pure talent, I suppose, as well. It kind of reminds me of Tiger Woods and his dad, too. You start playing golf at 2 years old, and by the time you're an adult, or even not even an adult, by the time you're a teenager, you're already a level ahead of almost anyone else that plays it. And it's just incredible how far you can go if you start early and you just stay dedicated to it. But a lot of people, they don't have that dedication or the passion for it. So there's a lot of things that have to all mesh together. And I'm sure there's a lot of parents out there that push for their kid to be the greatest violin player or the greatest basketball player or whatever it is. And if the talent's not there, if the kid's mind's not there, it's just never going to be, no matter how hard you want that as a parent. Plus, you could have the opposite effect where you just completely push them away from that thing that you really want them to be. So, yeah, it's kind of incredible to see a story like that play out. But that is called King Richard. Why it's called King Richard, I'm not entirely sure. But it's a pretty good movie about tennis, and more so about growing up with adversity and making your way in this life and becoming wildly successful. The last movie I watched was last night. We watched this one together as a family. It was the Elvis movie, and that one was actually a really fun watch. It was just crazy edited. Like the beginning of it, you're just on this wild ride, and they somehow in 2 hours and 40 minutes take you through Elvis's entire life. The guy that plays Elvis, amazing, like spot on, like sounds just like him, looks like him. And it was really interesting to watch the story of Elvis, and also just a really sad story as well, because if you don't know the story on this, and I didn't know it prior to hearing some reviews on this movie, Elvis, while super successful, he kind of lived his life like a prisoner because of his manager. Colonel Parker was his name. And he kind of kept Elvis almost as like a circus act, where he was forced to perform and thought that he was in debt, and never really got to live his full life because he was stuck living this performance life, and obviously turned to drugs, and his life ended early because of that, most likely. So it was a sad story of this guy that was super creative and talented, and it didn't, unlike the Williams sisters, didn't get to see everything that would have potentially come of that. I looked up Elvis's net worth last night just out of curiosity, and they said like everything that he has right now is worth between $400 to $500 million, which I'm not sure how accurate that is, but it's just crazy to think that this guy who thought he was dead broke, before he died, or was performing these shows to try to get out of debt to his manager who was abusing his money, just how wildly successful he was, and what his life would have potentially become had he lived through all of that. And it's just a sad story, but he did entertain a lot of people, and the world is a better place with him having been in it. So that's the story of Elvis, once again on HBO Max. So if you're interested in all three of these movies, you could get 1 month of HBO Max or one trial of HBO Max and watch them all for literally nothing. It's way cheaper than going to the movies, technically. So that's Watch-A-Tect. I usually save that for later in the episode, but it felt relevant since I was laid up and sick for the last few days, and now we can go back in time to the beginning of the week when I was feeling good and feeling healthy. First thing we did this week, I wasn't really looking forward to this, but we ended up going couch shopping. Cody had this vision for our front room, which as of like all the time up until now, for the last 2.5 years, it's been like a Clarkman playroom. And there's just, Duplo in there and other toys and easels and books and all kinds of things that you would expect from like a little kid's playroom. And she wanted to turn that into like an actual sitting room, something that if you have guests over, everybody can kind of sit down there and have a chit chat. What you'd expect when you walk into someone's house, and it's like the first room you see. It's usually the room that has like furniture but no TV, and that's what it became, because this week we went shopping and we ended up finding this couch. We looked through this entire building and we found this sofa or couch, and the really awesome thing was it was on sale. It was like half off. And it was like the perfect color. It felt comfortable, and we just did it. We did it, and it was so darn cool just to kind of luck out on that, because you can order stuff, but obviously you're not going to get a deal on that. Sometimes they're just trying to move inventory, and it takes time to order it. So in this case, we bought it, and then 2 days later they brought it over. 3 days later, and it's now in our new sitting room, which is pretty cool. I should have made a vlog about that. I don't think anybody would really want to watch, but maybe fun to just walk through a furniture store and see all of this stuff, because it was a pretty big place that we went through. It was actually the place that we got our other furniture at too back in the day, but our other stuff we ordered, and this was just so convenient, just being like, yep, we'll take that one, done deal. And now we have a new sofa, just the thing that we needed, right? That wasn't the one that I laid on all week. I was in the other one, so that one doesn't have all my sickness all over it, thankfully. It's still just perfectly fresh and perfectly new. Next thing, when I was feeling healthy, speaking of health, let's talk about fitness attacked. Man, I got into it this week, guys. I was really into a game called Thrill of the Fight. It's for Oculus, now Meta Quest, the company that we don't speak of, owned by Facebook. Or Facebook is now Meta. They own Oculus, which is now Meta. It's so weird to have this. I had to do an update on it because it's been a while since I played. And it was so weird to have like this thing that says Oculus on it and everything was like an Oculus Quest. After you do the update, now it's like when you turn it on, which VR is like a headset you put on and you have these two controllers in your hands. It's all wireless. And now it says Meta. So like, it's just weird to me to change the name of the company of the thing. Like imagine having a Nintendo, like a Nintendo Switch, for example, and all of a sudden Nintendo decides to be something else. And then it's no longer a Nintendo Switch. It's just so weird. Like usually you work so hard for that brand recognition and then just to like throw that away. But I guess I see the bigger picture where Mark Zuckerberg wants us all to live in this virtual reality world where the real world doesn't exist, which we sort of do right now. It's just you happen to have a slab of glass and metal in your hand. That is your virtual reality world that many of us live in for a big part of our day. Just imagine not having anything in your hand and having it on your face, which I think we're more likely, and this is getting off into the technology talk than it is into fitness, but I think we're more likely to see some type of glasses that we wear, which is going to be an augmented reality as opposed to virtual reality. The difference being virtual reality is if I put that on, I'm in like a whole nother room, or I'm on the beach, in the desert, on a mountain, or in a game, for example, like Thrill the Fight where you box. Augmented reality, you put that on, and when you get a text message, instead of looking at your phone and holding that up, on the side of your vision here, it would say like message from Cody. And if you're getting directions while you're driving, you could see almost like you're playing Grand Theft Auto or whatever, where you have like the line going through. I think it could be really cool, but again, us humans and technology is a great thing, but sometimes you can take it too far and it can destroy you. And I fear that as a species, we may be very close to that level, if not already beyond where we should have ever gone. But let's talk about boxing. Thrill of the Fight. It's a VR game where you put the headset on, you've got your two hands on. You go in, like the first thing you do, you're in like this room and there's a scale and you stand on it and then they take your picture and that's how the game starts. But then you go through and you box all these various boxers up through like the ranks or whatever. You start in like this local gym and then work your way up to the world champion. And I remember doing this before. I did it like a year ago. And what I do is I go out in the garage. I pull my car out of the garage, and then you set up like the boundary area. So you got a big area in there. Think of how big a parking space would be. And then you just box in virtual reality. And the he's blocking himself, so you have to block yourself too. You obviously don't feel any pain or anything when you get punched in the head. It's not going to knock you out. But you can inflict damage on the other guy, and it's really satisfying to do. And it's one of these situations where you are working really hard. Like I looked at my heart rate. My heart rate was at like 180 beats per minute, which is crazy high. And it's just because you got your arms up and you're constantly boxing and fighting, and you're getting one heck of a workout. Like I'm drenched with sweat when I'm doing this, but you don't realize just how hard you're working out because it's fun. It's way different than being on a treadmill or running or doing an elliptical or whatever it is, because you're doing something that's super enjoyable. Like who doesn't want to beat the crap out of somebody, right? Especially when there's no consequences to you. And it's just so darn satisfying when you knock somebody down or knock them out. It's so amazing. Sometimes like the final guy, I beat the final boss this week. Sometimes it's about just staying alive. Don't let him knock you down. So there's a lot of like moving around and stuff. And I just loved it. I love playing that. So I beat it all on the medium or normal difficulty. And I like to go back through and do hard. I did a test just out of curiosity. After I beat the final guy, I went back to the very beginning just to see how I do against the first guy. Like literally knocked him out in the first round within a few seconds. I was like, all right, I've improved as a boxer. So there's another benefit is you can learn to become a proficient boxer a little bit through this. Although I doubt it would really translate in the ring. I imagine if I were to actually go out and fight someone, they would absolutely destroy me because there's a lot of like leg work and different things involved. But I had a great time with it. And on a positive side of that too, not only am I having fun, I'm getting my heart rate up, burning calories. My weight loss has started this week. I haven't tested it since I got sick, so I imagine I probably lost some weight from that because I haven't eaten anything other than some soup last night for dinner in like the last 2 days, and I had a Powerade. But I was down 2.2 pounds this week prior to getting sick. So that was my first loss that I started seeing, and that was awesome. It was good to see because as you guys know, I've been on this fitness journey since the beginning of September when Cody and I started going to Planet Fitness 3 times a week, and I wasn't seeing any losses. I was feeling stronger. My muscles were definitely feeling it, but I wasn't seeing the scale go down, and that was frustrating for me. But now introducing this like really hardcore cardio, and I was going like in terms of timing, I was fighting like 2 or 3 guys a day, so it was like 40 minutes, and the final round is 5 rounds at I think 4 minutes, so it was like 20 minutes just for that guy. And yeah, it was doing its job. So I'm like, what else can I do in VR to get like a really good workout? And one game that I saw is called Supernatural. It's sort of like Beat Saber, but there's a lot more moves to it. Beat Saber is, if you've ever seen anything Oculus Quest, it's like the most popular game in VR where you essentially have 2 lightsabers in your hands and you're cutting up these boxes that are flying at you. Think of like Guitar Hero sort of. And I was going to download Supernatural, but I saw that it's like $20 a month as like a plan. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to do that. I'll be happy to spend $20 on the game to just play it, but I don't want to get into a monthly subscription fee. In fact, it's funny because that reminds me of a comment, or I guess there was like a question that I saw on Reddit. It was Ask Reddit. It said, what in 50 years will people be nostalgic about? And the one person said, when you can actually own items. Because as you can tell with almost everything, all these companies are turning to a subscription model where you never actually own anything. They just want you to pay for it every single month forever. Think of all the streaming services that you have, or Supernatural, for example. Heck, even this app that I have on my iPhone, I was playing around with. I got the new iPhone 14 Pro this week, which I'll talk about, I guess, in our next segment here. They were talking about switching it from I bought the app, but they were talking about making it a subscription model, and they're asking my opinion on that. And I was just like, nope. They're like, how likely would you be to buy it? I'm like, nope. And I just said no to everything. So hopefully they get the hint. But again, that's what these companies want to do, because why charge somebody something for something once for $20 when maybe you could give it to them for free, get them hooked into it, and then charge them $20 every month that they do or do not use it, because that's how subscriptions work. Oftentimes, people have subscriptions for things that they never even enjoy. For example, Planet Fitness, $10 a month. It's super cheap, right? How many people are signed up for that but never go? Like, you signed up in January when you wanted to do your New Year's resolution, and then you went for January, and then you went into like the first week of February, then you stopped, and you just never canceled. It's just $10. You don't even notice it coming out. But then they're doing that for hundreds of people, probably, maybe more. It's just crazy. Like, imagine if all the people that are actually signed up for that place actually showed up there. It'd probably be to the point where you couldn't even get on a machine at all. I would absolutely be that way. So that's the prescription. That's the subscription model. And maybe someday we will imagine a life where you actually own things. Someone made a joke in that Reddit post about you have a toaster and you have to pay monthly for it to pop the toast out or something like that. In fact, like, wasn't it BMW that just went to why do I keep saying prescription? A subscription model on their heated seats in one of their vehicles, or all their vehicles, where the heated seats exist there. They work, everything is fine, but they, like, through the computer, they shut the ability to use it off, simply so you have to pay the subscription to turn it on. And I think Tesla Autopilot's the same way. You have to pay for that either upfront or on a monthly subscription, but it's already there. Like, these things already exist. They just lock you out of it because they want to take your money. It's just nuts. Speaking of taking your money, I gave $20 more to Meta straight to Mark Zuckerberg for another game on Oculus or the Quest. I'm not calling it Meta. I'm just going to call it the Oculus Quest. This one's a very different game than boxing people or getting a great workout. This is a fishing game. If you guys didn't know, recently Clark and I kind of got into fishing while we were up at camp, and I had a lot of fun with it. And I was like, what'd be really fun is fishing in VR, because you have like the controls where you can kind of reel it in, and you could do the motion and stuff like that, and you could actually be fishing somewhere without actually being there. And I found a game called Real VR Fishing. It was $20, and it was real fun. I had a lot of fun with playing this game. So the way it works is, just like I mentioned, they set you up in like a fishing spot, and you have your rod, and by pressing left and right on the control stick, you can switch between different lures, I guess. And you have like these special glasses on in the game, like they pretend like your guy's putting these glasses on where you can see all the various fish under the water. It's like an outline. And when you switch to your lure, it shows you which of those fish are interested in that particular lure. So it's very not realistic in that regard. But if you switch it to the right, you might see a green fish here, which means they like it. There's a yellow, it's like meh, and then red's not interested. And if you keep switching between those, then you can fish out to them, and they'll be interested or not interested in it. And when you catch a fish, you have the option to keep it, which is I guess like adds to your collection, or you can, and I think you get XP for that, or you can release it, which gives you maybe that's XP. It gives you points where you can unlock new levels. So what I do is I only keep the fish that are like my personal best of that particular group. Like say I catch a trout, I keep that one. But if I catch like a third one of those or whatever, I just release it so I can unlock new levels. And I guess it's like finding a balance between there. So I played that for a bit, and it's so weird going from a game where it's like you're standing in the garage like punching people and like moving around like crazy, to playing a game where I was just sitting on the couch like fishing like this in a virtual reality world where I can look around. And it's like, I think the first level is in South Korea, and there's also Japan in there, which I'm excited to go to. And I think there's one other place too. There might be a DLC for like the Western United States. But yeah, I'm just having fun with it. And it's a nice little cool down from playing something crazy like Thrill the Fight. And just neat. Like I really love this whole VR situation. I wish the graphics were a little better and stuff, but I like the fact that the whole Oculus situation or Meta situation is wireless. But I'll be curious to see what the PlayStation VR 2, which is coming out, maybe, I don't know if it's this year or next year, that's going to be wired to the PlayStation 5, and I imagine that's going to be just insane. Like you're literally going to be in your PlayStation 5 in your goggles. So I'll probably at least look into that. But that won't be nearly as fun as having the freedom of motion that you have with Meta, as much as I hate saying that. So that is, boy, we're really getting into a lot of like tech. Let's go into more of it. I mentioned I got the iPhone 14 Pro. I got this, I think last week, but I wanted to give like a week of impressions with it to see how I like it. And I will say that if you have an iPhone, I kind of regret buying it. The main reason I did is because there were camera improvements, which is great. And I shoot pretty much everything I do on Greg's World is on my phone. So I was like, if I can get a little bit of better camera, it's worth it for me, because there's thousands of people that watch this stuff, and a little bit better could be worth it. And also because Cody had a iPhone XR and she wanted to upgrade. So I said, how about we do this? I'll give you my 13 Pro, and then I'll get the 14. So she upgrades by several years and I get the newest year, and she was down with that. So I ended up doing it. But after using it and kind of checking it out, like it literally feels like the same exact phone that I had last year. And I would say if you have like an 11 on, it's probably not worth upgrading. If you have like an iPhone 10 or an iPhone XR, for example, probably worth it getting the iPhone 14 or 14 Pro. But man, it's just this is so frustrating. I guess the movement, the progression, I guess, technological progression feels so slow with Apple, and maybe all phone carriers. Like I think about Steve Jobs, for example, when he invented the iPhone in 2006 or whatever year it came out. Did he really think that we would still be using like the iPhone 14 in 2022? Like I can't help but think that he would have come out with something completely new or completely different by now. Like how long are we just going to settle for, oh, the camera is now 2% better on the iPhone 36. The camera is 4% better on the iPhone 93. Like, are we just going to completely just live in this iPhone world? Like, where's the next thing? Why aren't we moving to the next thing yet? Why are we still just using that? Maybe it's like because it's so good and so perfect. Maybe the glasses thing is the next thing. But like, I just can't help but think he'd be disappointed. I think about him in that situation. I think about like, what would our founding fathers think of our current government situation in some cases, especially those that didn't want excessive taxation, or just seeing how things are in general between like these two parties and how bickering happens and how nothing seems to get accomplished. I just think about what these original like inspirational people would have thought about these things if they saw it how it was today. Like I can't help but think that Steve Jobs would be like sad that we are now on the iPhone 14 and it's literally the same thing that he came out with when they made it originally, just with better, like it's faster and better cameras, really. And I mean, there's other little upgrades and things too, but it's like you could go back to the original iPhone, assuming that it would still work and it still had the same experience almost. It's just, I don't know. It's kind of disappointing to me. But then again, you're not supposed to upgrade your phone every year technically. And if you did come from like an iPhone 10 to a 14, you'd probably be blown away by it, honestly. It's just when you get spoiled by getting one like every year. And this is totally like first world problems. Like, Greg, are you really complaining about getting a new phone every year? No, I'm not. I guess I just want so much more, like in terms of like the technology to move. And maybe that's just not possible. Maybe we need another person to really come in and just come up with like the next new thing or the next big thing. But I guess it's just way easier just to keep collecting money off that thing you already make. Look at the movie industry, look at the gaming industry. It's just, we don't like to take risks. We like to keep our shareholders happy and keep that money rolling in. And if that means making the iPhone 98, then the iPhone 98 will be out and it will have a 63% better camera than the iPhone 14 100 years from now. Anyways, that's my thoughts on technology, where it's been, where it's going, and what I think the original people behind these things would have thought. Let's keep talking about technology, I guess. Jeez. Let's talk about YouTube a little bit. One thing I saw this week was that YouTube is now monetizing YouTube Shorts, which is a good and bad thing, I think. I don't know how you feel about YouTube Shorts. I'm not a huge fan, especially when they show up in like my regular subscription feed. I wish Shorts was like completely separate, and I hear that they're working on that. But I'll say this, if you're not a fan of YouTube Shorts, now that the fact that they're monetizing them, you are going to get pummeled with YouTube Shorts from your favorite creators. You're going to see them doing that a lot more because it's a lot easier to make a 5-second video with some music behind it of something than it is to make a 10-minute video of you providing some type of value to your subscription base. So YouTube Shorts are going to start taking over, and a bigger concern that I have, and I saw a video talking about this, is the future of how we consume content through TikTok or Shorts or whatever it is. If you don't know what Shorts is, it's like a sub 1 minute video that's vertical that kind of just plays, and then you swipe through and it plays another one, you swipe, plays another one. It gets you into that loop, right? And they were talking about how the future of our content creation or content consumption won't be you choosing a video to watch. Like right now, you probably chose to watch this video. It didn't show up for you somewhere where you're automatically watching it, and then you decide you don't want to watch it anymore. You go on to the next thing. You saw this video in your subscription feed, your homepage, recommendations, wherever it was. You clicked on it, made a decision to watch it. The future of content consumption will be YouTube's algorithm or TikTok's algorithm as it works right now. They decide what you watch, and then if you want to continue watching that, you continue watching, and if you don't, you go on to the next thing. And through your actions, whether you watch or don't watch, the algorithm starts learning about you and what you like and don't like. So it's kind of a good thing, I suppose, because it gets really good at finding the thing just for you, but it really does take your choice out of it, and it does create that loop where you want that dopamine hit of getting that next thing. What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And you just sit there and for hours you scroll through videos, not really absorbing much of anything, just wanting the next thing. And if the first 2 seconds aren't something that instantly pops to you, you go on to the next thing. And I don't know what this is going to do to our brains, especially for younger people. I fear that this is going to be a real problem, especially when you're 8 years old and you're going through TikTok like a madman looking at all these videos. And then suddenly you need to sit in a classroom for the next 30 minutes and listen to a teacher talk. That does not translate over very well. It's hard for your brain to go from, like, it's like eating eating all the marshmallows out of the Lucky Charms, and then you have to sit down and you have to eat Frosted Flakes with no milk. That's kind of what that's like. Which one would you choose? And once you get used to the one, would you want to go the other? No, probably not. And that's what worries me a little bit. And it kind of worries me as a creator too, because it's like, if you have all these subscribers that subscribe to you at one point and then they watch your stuff, and then like, instead of them getting to choose to watch it, YouTube's just like, you don't really want to watch it anymore. Let's show this. I don't know. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but it's going to change dramatically in the coming years, especially as YouTube Shorts gets more popular, which I think it will, because I think attention spans are going down dramatically. And I think long form content, which now, crazy enough, like a 5-minute video is technically long form content, let alone a 30-minute podcast, for example. I don't know if there's going to be a place for this anymore, but I think there may. I think maybe there's going to be a place for really long form content like this, and then I think there's going to be maybe a place for really short form content like TikTok. But I think we're going to more skew over towards that. Speaking of YouTube, though, I had an idea for another show this week for this channel, or maybe just a segment for this that I would love to get you involved in as well. It's called The Rabbit Hole, and it's where I talk about a YouTube rabbit hole that I went down in a particular week, or you share one as a comment, and then I'll check it out, and then I'll report back as to what I thought about it. So, for example, I mentioned before that I got really into, somehow through the YouTube gods, beekeeping and collecting honey from hives, and people like going and taking down beehives that were in houses or places they weren't supposed to be. And for a while, YouTube was like, man, this guy, you know what he likes is bee videos. And I did. I really enjoyed those. Then I got into like seal coating driveways. That got really interesting for me, and pressure washing. And like, I then got into people that go to these abandoned yards, or people that don't maintain their yards, and they fix them up for free in order to make a YouTube video. I just really like those kind of satisfying videos, I suppose. And I thought, how cool would it be to do a show on like a YouTube rabbit hole that someone had gone down? This would have to be an interactive thing, because there's only so many things that YouTube's going to show me, or so many rabbit holes, which is why I think maybe it'd be a better segment here. But if the audience, or someone from the audience, had one that YouTube sent them down, or they went down, then I'd start looking at that, and then I could talk about it. It'd be kind of a cool thing. So that's just an idea I'm throwing out there. The rabbit hole that I went down this week was one that was unexpected. I don't know if you guys know PewDiePie, who's on YouTube. He's got a couple subscribers. He might be doing okay for himself. I'm not really into his usual videos at all, but he's living in Japan now, and YouTube recommended one of his Japanese vlogs where he just kind of goes through like I guess it's like a couple weeks of his life or whatever, and he kind of just cuts it up, and there's like kind of like transitions between each of the segments. But it was really fascinating to see someone living internationally like that, and just seeing what he's up to. And he's just like a really chill, normal guy. He's not the person that you'd expect from thinking about PewDiePie or watching like a normal PewDiePie video where he's, doing his crazy stuff in front of his computer, basically, or in like a room. This is him and his wife just kind of living their life with their 2 dogs in Japan, and seeing all these cool Japanese things, and going to tourist areas, trying foods, shopping, getting a vehicle. Like, I watched a whole bunch of these, and I was just like super impressed by it. Quality wise, pretty garbage. Like, he's using like, you would think have like some pretty good like camera or phone or whatever, but it's just like pretty bad. But then I realized like that is so unimportant, which is why I started thinking about my iPhone. I think more than anything, it's about you, or being able to connect to an audience, than it is about having the latest and greatest technology. Because like he's not worried about camera angles, he's not worried about like setup shots or the quality, like zooming in, like everything looks like not great at all, but it still works, and millions of people watch it. Just because of who he is, I suppose. And I was happy that YouTube sent me down that. I watched pretty much all of his Japanese vlogs while I was sick, and I enjoyed the heck out of it. It was really fun to watch. So if you go to his channel, and you have to look kind of down through his list of videos, because some of them are like the normal ones that he makes, but if you find his Japanese like day in the life vlogs, essentially, and a lot of them have clickbait titles. Like the first one I think that YouTube sent me was titled "Our House Was Attacked." And I was like, oh my God, but it was a spider. So definitely clickbait, but still nonetheless a fun watch. And I I was interested in it. So if you have a rabbit hole that you've been down or think that would be a cool show, let me know. We'll either do it as a show or a segment here on Missing Pieces. But speaking of a show here on the Greg's World Podcast Network, I'm doing a show called The Business Meeting where I talk about finances, I answer financial questions, or I talk about YouTube and talk shop here and things that are happening on YouTube or things that are working for me in my business or not working in my business, thoughts that I had, revelations that I've had. I guess an example of that would be the shorts monetization that we talked about here. But I want to talk this week about comments on YouTube videos. I started doing some research on comments in general. I was like, just thinking like how many people comment on a YouTube video versus how many people watch a video, and are comments really necessary? Like in the comments that people leave, are they valuable or are they just kind of throwaway things? And I want to talk all about that, but I want to talk about your response to this question in this week's episode if you're still with me here. What are your thoughts on comments, first of all, YouTube comments? Do you read them? Do you participate in the comments? Do you just don't even bother? If you do comment, why do you comment? Like what reason would you have to comment, or like what draws you to comment? Or if you don't comment, why is it that you don't comment? Is there a particular reason? Is it just something you don't do? Do you despise comments? I want to know all of your thoughts on YouTube comments, and then I want to make a business meeting show on YouTube comments. So I'm going to throw that out here for those hardcore people that are still with me. And if you're over there in podcast land, I'm going to ask that you come over and leave a comment about comments here, just so I can kind of get your feedback on that. And I'm also going to do a community post as well. So hopefully we can get a little bit of conversation stirred up around that. And then on Tuesday, I'll do a business meeting on YouTube comments, and I'll share some of the things that I've seen from just like in terms of numbers. And I'll share your thoughts and my thoughts as well on that. I think that'll be a fun thing to do. But that pretty much concludes this episode of Missing Pieces. Just a lot of tech talk this week about various things. But that was my week. That's what happened. A little bit of sickness, but most of the part, I felt pretty good for the better part of the week. Got some good cardio in, using VR, and shed some pounds. Still on that fitness journey. Still just living life and trying to make the best of it. And I encourage you to do the same. So thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you for next week's Missing Pieces.